Hey, it's James from 4x4 Earth here, and welcome to track 48 of the 4x4 Earth podcast, four-wheel drive track access with Shane Rose from 4-Wheel Drive Australia.
Join James from 4x4earth.com as he learns all there is to know about four-wheel driving, camping, fishing, and getting out and exploring our great country on the 4x4 Earth podcast.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the podcast. It's been a little while since we've done a podcast. I've been busy, I've been out and about in beautiful Queensland and pretty busy with work as well. But we've now got a few more guests lined up for the podcast. I know that a lot of people have been missing it. We're going to be really getting back into it. One big thing, hit us up on Facebook or on 4x4 Earth if you know of anyone who you would like to hear from on the 4x4 Earth podcast. We've got some new guests lined up, but I'm keen to hear from who you would like to hear us talking about on the podcast. Before we get into today's very important topic of track access and what 4-Wheel Drive Australia is doing to help to stop track closures and to get some track openings happening, a couple of public service announcements. Firstly, if you're enjoying the podcast, if you're enjoying 4x4 Earth, check out the 4x4 Earth store, maybe buy a t-shirt, get some merch. It's a great way to support us and to help keep the 4x4 Earth servers on. Secondly, if you're loving the 4x4 Earth podcast, please tell a mate about it. Please leave a review in iTunes. It really helps us to get the word out and to help find more listeners for the podcast, hopefully drive a few more people to go out four-wheel driving. Now, on to today's guest. We've got Shane Rose. He is the president of 4-Wheel Drive Australia. He's got quite an interesting story and he's got some unique insights into some of the things that are happening in the 4-wheel drive industry, particularly around land access. And I think that this is an important thing. I ran into Shane at the Melbourne 4x4 show. Got to say, probably one of the best shows I've seen for quite a while. There was lots of people there, lots of new products. It was really quite interesting. So, and lucky enough to run into Shane, let's have a chat and see what he's got to say about land access and other national issues for the four-wheel drive industry and community. Hi Shane, welcome to the show.
Hey James, thank you for inviting me along to have a chat today.
So, do you want to tell us a little bit about what it is that you're doing?
Okay, so I'm the president of 4-Wheel Drive Queensland and 4-Wheel Drive Australia. I've been involved in 4-wheel drive since 1987, so just a few years, and I've been president or chairman of various committees and councils in various states around Australia, with the main aim of promoting 4-wheel driving as legitimate family recreation, but also as part of that aiming to encompass other users that also use parks and public lands to ensure that things are kept open. So as a nation, we have access to our public lands and they're not locked up.
So, important question first. What four-wheel drive do you drive?
Well, I have a few, but they're all Jeeps. So I've got everything from a 1954 Jeep through to the latest model 2019 JL, which I now will, but I have a bit of a more of an off-road style vehicle, and then I have touring ones. So I have a few of them, but Jeep is definitely the brand, and I really like them because they're cool. So
the controversial question next. So why are you a Jeeper?
Well, I just think they're cool. I mean, they really, I suppose, embody what four-wheel driving is about and getting out in nature. I mean, it's a vehicle you can drive along, you can take the whole roof off, and you can be out with the elements. You know, they're designed for use off-road, more probably than on-road. So therefore, some of the maybe on-road characteristics are compromised. But if you want to go four-wheel driving and actually get out there and enjoy this great country we've got, then we need a vehicle that's capable, and a Jeep off the shelf is a very capable vehicle. That's why I like them. So
the Jeep that you take out most often, that you go off-roading in, what sort of mods have you done with it?
Okay, so I've got one that I built for doing like hard off-roading. So it's actually a TJ Jeep body on a Nissan Patrol chassis with a Holden V8 motor running double diff locks and 37-inch tyres. So that's the one that I drive hard off-road. The one that I use for touring and stuff is a new JL Jeep with just a modest 2-inch lift and 34-inch tyres with double diff locks, which makes it quite capable as it is.
Yep. I'm quite looking forward to the new Ute when that comes out next year.
The Gladiator is going to be a great thing. I've got one of the old Gladiators from the 60s.
Oh, wow.
Which I'm in the process of refurbing. So it's old school Gladiator, single cab design, but it's like a bit truckish sort of based. So it's really cool, and it'll be finished in the next few months. So it's going to be a really nice vehicle just to run around. I've got nice timber decks in the tray, and it's just going to be a nice, cool thing to run around in.
Yeah. So mud, snow, sand or rock?
Look, I like all of the above. I tend to spend a lot of time in the sand. Being in Queensland now, we have Fraser Island, Moreton Island, Stradbroke Island, and all the beaches. It's awesome in summertime to be able to get out there and enjoy those things. And then in wintertime, the bush is the way to go. So I do like my rock climbing and stuff. And I've actually competed in every major competition in Australia at the last 15 years. So I do enjoy all those sorts of things.
Ah, cool. With all of that experience, what is the best track that you've ever done and why?
I believe the best track I've ever done is actually Wilbur Ridge in New South Wales. Unfortunately, that's now locked up due to the Wallamai Pine being found close to it, and it was definitely a thing that I fought against being closed. A magnificent track. It took 2 days to go through, 2 to 3 days. You camped on the track. Very technical and interesting.
Wow. When did it get closed?
That would have been in the late 90s.
Sad times.
So it's very sad, yes. I mean, it was a historic track, but yes, unfortunately closed. They found the Wallamai Pine, which is that oldest pine in Australia, very close to where the track was.
Yep. What's the hairiest moment that you've had four-wheel driving, and what have you learnt from it?
I've had a few, and generally it's because people say, oh, you can't drive up there, and I go, you know what? I reckon I can. So sometimes that can put you in some very awkward situations, and what I've learnt from it is that, maybe I shouldn't take on all the challenges that people give me.
Any one particular moment that comes to mind?
Oh, I've had a few. Well, I was in a competition actually, which was a buggy competition down in Eastern Creek, and there was this, and it was actually, you were driving over containers that had all ramps on them, and they put us through this line, which was very interesting. I said, if I take a slightly different line, I reckon I can get through there, and it fell on its side. So that was interesting. So we picked it back up, and off we went. But apart from that, through all my four-wheel driving over the many years, touch wood, I've never actually had a normal road-style vehicle fall over or anything else, and I've done all the hard tracks, Cape York, all over the place. So generally, I think if you sit back and take time and have a look at what you're going to do and think about it before you do it, you'll generally be able to get yourself through.
Yep. So you're now the president of Four Wheel Drive Australia. How did you get that job?
That was an interesting transition. Four Wheel Drive Australia is probably needed to go through some changes and some modifications. It had gone a little bit stale over the years, and I'd been pushing for change to happen for a while. We had a couple of, one rogue person in there that had to be moved on, so it was really time for a change. So I came along with a plan, and that was accepted by the other state, or most of the other states, and we had some people come through and do a complete review of what we should be doing, what our members wanted and what the public wanted us to do, and we're now moving along on that path. And I suppose that's what put me in the position I'm in currently now, which is the president.
And what are you hoping to do as president?
The main thing we have to do is that if you look at the four-wheel drive industry in Australia, it's massive. So if you look at, and it's not just people in four-wheel drive clubs that drive four-wheel drives. You've got all the caravans, you've got the fossicles, you've got people that ride horses. They tow their horse boats with the four-wheel drives. It's just massive. Canoers, mountain bike riders, they all get to their places they go to with a four-wheel drive. It's a massive industry. The thing is, if you look at people supporting that industry, and whether it's in either a club or associations or even Facebook, they're not necessarily growing as much as what I think they should be. So we've got a vast majority of people out there and a huge amount of the population that are utilising these vehicles to achieve and go and do the recreation. But we're not really getting, I believe, good representation at the moment, or as much representation we should be when we go to Parliament about things. Unfortunately, the green movement is a very well-oiled machine. They've been around a long time, and they're very cohesive. So from that point of view, they seem to be able to get a lot more traction. So something, like, we've found this little turn bird at the beach or something, supposedly, then, of course, the beach gets closed or that track gets closed. But, has the right research been done, and was that the right decision to make at the time, or could we have done something else? And I believe because we haven't really got ourselves structured very well, I believe that's why we're not getting all these wins. So I think we're starting to get some traction, but I definitely don't think we're where we need to be. And I've been fighting this cause since, the late 80s on many fronts. And even today, we're still fighting with that traction. And I believe that's what Four-Wheel Drive Australia and the other associations and groups need to be very careful that they work together to be able to achieve a common goal, which is access for all. I mean, that was my slogan back in the 80s in New South Wales, the same as the Buggy one. Access for all is important. I mean, we're all here. Australia's ours. We should be able to use it responsibly, and that's what we've got to work towards together. We shouldn't be trying to fight against each other. We need to be very clear that we all need to work together to the common goal of keeping these areas open for everybody to enjoy. Kids, older people in wheelchairs, everybody should be able to enjoy these areas.
Well, it's interesting. So you mentioned Bug U, and I saw the Bug U guys at the four-wheel drive show in Melbourne last week. And because of that, I'm actually going to go to a protest rally, which is something that I have never done before. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so Bug U, I am as well at the same show. So I heard them before, but I hadn't actually met them. So I had to chat to one of the guys there. Because interesting enough, as I said, the slogan they've got, Access for All, is one that was used in New South Wales in the mid to late 90s regarding the introduction of wilderness areas in large tracts of land in there, especially the Barrington Tops. So that was where our slogan was, Access for All. And we united everybody together. So I think the Bug U idea of getting all the users together in one, trying to get them all together in one place to be able to drive forward with the agenda of keeping things open is a very smart thing. And I think we've done it before. It just seems to wane. So I'm hoping they can keep the momentum going. But once again, it comes back to the fact that I believe that we all need to work together to achieve the common goal. We shouldn't be infighting, because that does no good for us.
And so they're actually mobilising for a rally and a march on Parliament next week?
Yep, and I've done them before. Unfortunately, I won't be attending that one there because I'm actually going to have to be in New South Wales next week at the same time for a meeting I'm holding there. But I believe these definitely an important part of our process in Australia of how we do things, our democratic society. If you look at the other side of things, the Greens want to have things changed and change things from being a state forest or a national park to then closing up being a wilderness area. So they're very well oiled and structured in how they do things, and they use these sorts of things themselves to be able to gain some ability to talk to the politicians to get some change to happen. So if we sit back and we're not heard, if we're very quiet and we're not heard, then the message is not going to get out. So when you've got things happening of a big nature like this, I believe it's important for us to be heard. And if that means we have to have a rally and actually go and meet out the front and make some noise and let the politicians see that this is a big issue and that they need to think very carefully about the decisions they're making, then I think there's definitely a time and place for that. And there's major change happening in Victoria, and we definitely need to highlight that so that the decisions are made in a way that's an informed way rather than a one-sided way.
I think the interesting thing is that, as you said, the Greens machine is a well-oiled machine, and one of the things that they're really good at doing is getting people out to protest. And you see, it doesn't need to be a large number of protesters, but when you've got those protesters there, they're actually prepared to take an action for something that they believe in. And often, the politicians, because they're worried about if they're going to be able to keep their job, they react to that small minority, often to the detriment of the silent masses. And I think we can no longer be the silent masses.
That's correct. And unfortunately, with four drivers and the users of our type, because we're all people that go to work, have a job, we actually go out and we put back into our economy. We pay taxes, we buy motor vehicles, we buy parts for them, we buy push bikes, we buy kayaks, we buy camping gear. I mean, we're people that are doing all this stuff. So the amount of money that the four-wheel industry puts back into our economy is massive. But the problem is we're a bit apathetic. So, that apathy means that we can be pushed around easily because we're not good at getting together and doing things. So, as you've said, we've had in Brisbane just recently, on several occasions over the last 4 weeks, a very concentrated campaign of minimal, one or two extreme green people that have been doing things like, sticking themselves to the road, taking canoes and sticking them to the roads. They've been doing all these things to try and highlight their plight. And so it's very smart from the green movement because they actually generally pay these people to go on TV. They pay them more to be there. And the view is they get a few radicals in there and it starts the ball rolling. Then the green machine behind comes through and say, oh, they're radical, but hey, this is an important issue. How about you talk to us about how we can get this settled down and we can move on? The four-wheel drive and public land users you need to unite and start using some of those principles. If we can't go down the traditional lines and talk to them like we have done previously, and we're not getting traction that way, then we need to have a call to action. And that's what this is. The Bug U is doing a call to action, and I believe that there's definitely times where this is important.
Now, do you want to talk us through what it is that they're protesting about? So there's the government is looking, or the state government is looking at making some legislative changes. Do you want to sort of run us through those?
Yeah, the main thing, my understanding of it mainly is that what's happening is that there's a lot of state forest areas, and those state forest areas, like New South Wales, Queensland and Victoria and other states, have very open rules and regulations around who can go there, who can't go there. Because remember, the state forests are always a money-making machine, so therefore they wanted to make the public feel welcome and encourage them to come into areas in there, and they wanted to get good press and good feelings back from the general users of the forest. The government down there in Victoria now wants to move some of those to be national parks. Now, the problem with the national park does have some restrictive guidelines around who can and can't use those areas. Things like horses. You have a problem with that because they don't like the fact that horses' excrement can actually carry beetles and dung and other things that can actually affect the environment. They don't like people that are in there fossicking and people that are in there gold panning, and there's all these other groups who, unfortunately, the national parks are not prepared to cater for. So what that's meant from Bug U's point of view is that you've now got a whole tracts of land that are going to that are changing, and it may seem like a simple thing just to change it from let's change it from a state forest to a national park, but in actual fact, it's going to impact a lot of the current users. There's already national parks out there. They've already got their structures in place, and those people are already excluded from those areas. So the more you allow this to happen, what it means is that the more you restrict the areas that people can go to do these activities. So therefore, it puts more pressure on those areas to be able to be sustainable because you have more users. So it's a very fine line you've got to be careful of following, because if we start shutting those users out of certain areas and they've got to go to other areas, then the impact on those other areas can become greater. I don't think that's a benefit to our environment or to Victoria. I don't think that's a benefit at all. So I think that needs to be very carefully thought through. You shouldn't be blocking a whole lot of users out of areas they're currently using and forcing them into other areas, which then could potentially create overuse in those areas.
So why is there the difference between state forests and national parks? Because I'm assuming that the horses that are using the state parks now, has there been issues with beetles in their poo or not?
This is a classic thing that we find all the time, James. It doesn't matter whether it's about this sort of topic or any topic. If we talk about even the time to the line sort of topic, we've actually done a whole lot of freedom of information requests here in Queensland to find information about, having a high-lifted vehicle, does that make it more susceptible to an accident? So we actually asked for information on accidents, and guess what? There's nothing there that says that having a vehicle lifted really high with larger tyres and stuff is actually in more accidents. In actual fact, it's the other way. A lot of the insurers are saying that because vehicles are modified and because that means that they're kept up to date and they've got new equipment on their vehicle, they're safer than vehicles that haven't been touched for 10 or 15 years. So it's probably the same thing here. I mean, I've never heard and haven't heard things about people saying that, having horse in there is cradle dramas. But this is just some of the things they say to try and make their case that they should be moved on.
Because I would have thought there's been horses in state forests for decades.
Longer. I mean, it's hundreds of years there's been horses running around in Australia. I mean, so, look, can these things, if they're rampant and not people aren't careful, that's could be going to be a problem. But realistically, we're not seeing, I haven't seen any data that says that all these other users in those areas are creating a massive impact that is severely detrimental to that area moving forward. Because if it was that badly detrimented, why would you want a national park? That's my question. If it's that bad, why would you want it as a national park? So obviously it's still in good condition. So doesn't that go against the reason why they're trying to make a national park maybe? I don't know. It just seems that, unfortunately sometimes, maybe this is not happening, but sometimes, people are looking out for their jobs. And if you've got people in parks and they're looking to expand their footprint, which means that there's more jobs and more funding for them, then obviously the logical way is to start looking at areas of public land that they can go, let's make this a national park. But maybe the reasons behind it aren't sound. And that's, I think, what we've got to get to the bottom of. What are the real reasons for making these national parks? Is there a reason at all, or is it just a land grab? I don't know.
It is concerning because I think I'm really big on land access and land access for all users, because I think that united we stand, divided we fall, and there's a lot more people. Yeah, and you see the classic is the dirt bike riders.
Yep.
You know, they've got just as much right to be out there as what we do. You know, you've got the hunters, you've got the fishers, and yeah, there's quite a vocal group of fossickers and prospectors, which I wasn't really aware of.
Horse riders is a big thing. Horse riders, definitely. Like, there's lots of people out there that ride horses currently in state forests. It's a great area for them to use because it's available for them to use.
What are the funding implications then for the change from a state forest to a national park? I know that's a question without notice, and you may not know the answer, but...
Yeah. It's an interesting thing, isn't it? Because, you know, state forest really is a part of where they're a business. So they're actually in the business of cultivating land. So, you know, what's happened over time is they've become a lot better at their practices, and they're aiming towards getting to what I believe is sustainable future. So what they do now is they reforest. So they harvest and then they reforest. And then, you know, in 30, 40 years' time, they harvest and they reforest. And this is one of the big things in the Hunter regional area, which we found quite perplexing at the time, was that a lot of the areas they want to make wilderness areas up there were actually regrowth forests. So it comes back to my argument with the fact that if the forestry's done such a great job of regrowing that they think this is suitable to be a pristine wilderness area, well then, okay, the impact that they do when they harvest, obviously there's an impact, but the regeneration they're now doing is obviously working. So if they've got it to the stage where we've got sustainable business structure operating, the more land we take away from them, that makes it less sustainable. So therefore, Australia itself becomes less self-sustaining and it has to rely more on other people and other imports, which cost more. So that's where it's interesting. So you've got a business here that makes money for the government. It's a business that is a sustainable business, and they are doing regeneration and regrowth and they're harvesting. So taking that away from them and putting it to a national park is a very interesting question asked as to why they would do that. So a national park is not necessarily an income-producing thing. And actually, most of the time they say they don't make money. That's why they're charging us fees to go there, where in state forests, generally there's no fees, because the state forests are funded by the fact that they're a business, where parks, theoretically, isn't a business. So this move of land from being a state forest to being a national park, I think will have a lot more impact than what people believe and what they even think about, because we're now losing a sustainable business model, which is, you know, the forestry industry, and we're going to replace it with an area that can be used by select groups and select people at a cost. So when it comes to funding, I would think that the forestry wouldn't be getting much funding because they're self-funding. Yes, parks do get funded. So if we look at that, does that mean that, you know, having a park costs us more money, so therefore our taxes have to go up? And having a state forest means that we have a sustainable industry that actually provides income back to the state, so it keeps our taxes down? I don't know the answer to that, but when I looked at it before in other areas, like in New South Wales, that's the determination that I came to. And so therefore, that's where it comes back to, I think some of these ideas of moving ownership are quite flawed. And it's more about the theoretical benefit of, from a green point of view, the theoretical benefit of having more land that are not being used by people. So therefore, when it goes to time to go to the polls, they can go, look at all these things we did for you Greens. You know, we've gone and we've changed all these areas from state forests that chop down trees and do all these nasty things. And we've gone and made a national park so that now it's sustainable things for the future, but they're not going to provide us income anymore. They're just going to be a burden to our society because they don't create income. Or do they then go, well, you know what, we need to start putting fees up because we own all the land now, so let's just make it really expensive. So therefore, we'll have less users, they can't afford to go there, but we'll make some money out of it now, which can go back into the coffers. I know, it's a very interesting thing, isn't it? I mean, where is it going to end up? That's a very good question, James.
Well, the other component of that, I think, is what's the economic impact for a lot of the rural towns that rely on four-wheel drivers who are visiting four-wheel drive tracks. If there's less people four-wheel driving and horse riding and dirt bike riding and hunting, fishing, fossicking, What's the impact going to be on these towns?
Look, and that's a very good point, and it's very clear to see that in other areas. If you were to go and look at and I keep on coming back to it, I know this area intimately from years ago, the Barrington Tops area, there was two towns, Gloucester and Dungog, that were very reliant on the forestry industry because that's where the jobs were in those areas. And also the forward drivers that went into those areas for all different things. So there was people up there that even the bushwalkers use forward drives to get to the urban areas. Everybody uses forward drives to get to these places because they're remote. So all those people were going through the town, they were filling up with fuel, they were buying food in the towns, they were coming out after driving all weekend, they'd come back, fill up because they'd been using their fuel, they'd fill up, they'd buy stuff. So if you look at those two towns now, and you look at them, in a short period of time after what happened, they were decimated, absolutely decimated. Things were closed, shops were closed, service stations, nobody went there. It was horrendous. It was really bad. So you're right, it does have a huge impact on those small regional towns.
When we convert land from state forests to national parks, has anyone looked at the impact on economic activity and how many jobs are going to be lost?
It was definitely done. I haven't seen any data on that down there because I'm not actually in the Victorian area.
Yep.
But I can tell you in the New South Wales area, all that information was provided to the government. In actual fact, back then there was it was asked for public consultation, and through freedom of information, it was actually proven that there was more people that voted against making the wilderness areas, yet the government still made the wilderness areas so they could get the green vote. And it decimated, and there was all these impact studies done to prove what damage it was going to do, not only to that, but also to the sustainable future of forestry itself. And they didn't care because the government, all their interest in the Labor government at the time was to create more areas because they can secure their green vote.
Well, that's a little bit unfortunate, isn't it? And that's why I think it's important that we have discussions about these topics, because realistically, I think it's a little bit harsh. The people who live in these areas should probably have more say than your I don't want to stereotype too much, but your latte sipping CBD Melbourneite who thinks in principle that it's a good idea that we should lock up the bush and that people shouldn't access it, but they're not the ones. They might be a little bit less excited about the prospect if they lived out in that area and relied on that economic activity for their actual income and to be able to pay for their mortgage.
Yeah, and unfortunately, James, what it is it's the minority is getting overridden here. So you've got these small towns that have got small populations that get by, and they struggle. Now, they're not out there doing really well. They're struggling, and this is just not going to be good for those. Unfortunately, what I think, and it's always concerned me for a long time, is our children. Okay, so let's come back and forget about any use. Let's just talk about children. So if you look over the years, taking children out into the world, into the forest and places like that, and actually teaching them skills of the forest and how to effectively use. Like years ago, we used to bury stuff. We used to take rubbish in, take rubbish out. It was all these great things to come up. Now, the less we educate our children, and the more we allow our children to sit in these tablets and sit in their concrete cities, then what's going to happen is we're going to have a generation down the track that's going to go, you know what? Those forests and that, we don't want to go there. They're dangerous. There's snakes. There's spiders. Let's just keep on building all these big cities because, we don't know about it. We hate it. We're scared of that sort of area. If you look at it now, our children, there's less children going to things like Scouts, less children going to things of those sorts of nature where they're learning about the bush and the environment. And I think that's a really sad thing. We are not teaching our children anymore how to actually enjoy and love. Yeah, that's the problem. Our children are not being taught anymore how to respect and use the bush. That's a problem, I think.
I think it's a massive problem because they're not then going to be able to teach their children about how to use the bush appropriately and to respect it, and then no one's going to go bush. And, I know we did a podcast a while ago about the Blue-Green Crew, and they take people out with post-traumatic stress disorders from the ADF and the police.
Yep, I know them,
Yeah, going bush has had a massive impact. I've spoken to people and they've told me the impact about just being able to go bush and the therapeutic benefit that has had for them, literally what a lifesaver it has been. And I've spoken to people who've said, if I hadn't gone out bush that weekend, I would not be here. And,
definitely.
We're locking up.
Getting out there and enjoying the bush and enjoying the environment and doing it responsibly. I mean, it's all about, to be sustainable in the industry of recreation, you need to be responsible. We can't be out there vandalising, but we can be responsible. And the authorities can help us with that by providing us facilities to allow us to be responsible while we're there. It's quite simple.
Exactly. We'll finish off here. Shane's got a few more things that we're going to cover off in the next episode of the podcast. In the meantime, I will share with you a link in the show notes about the press release from 4 Wheel Drive Victoria. I am a big believer in united we stand, divided we fall, and I think that there aren't enough 4-wheel drivers who are passionate enough about land access to be able to make a difference. I think we need to be reaching out to everyone else who is passionate about land access. The bushwalkers, the bike riders, the orienteerers, the fossickers, the shooters, the fishers, all of those people. There's so many people out there who enjoy our great outdoors in so many different ways. We need to make sure that all of us have got access to the land that we love. That's about it. I will see you I'll talk to you in the next episode.
4x4earth.com is used by over 200,000 people every month to find great tracks, organise trips, and find out how to better enjoy exploring the great outdoors. There's over 1,000 tracks and 300 campsites ready for you to explore. So check out 4x4earth.com today and sign up to get access to the track information, ask questions, and meet other 4x4 Earthers. Membership is completely free. If you're looking for a good route, check out 4x4earth.com today.